We're going to be going over thermal waving and thermal curling, and both can be done with thermal irons. And where thermal irons are different than our regular curling irons, we're used to having a spring grip on them, and this is a loose joint. The major two parts of the thermal iron are the rod and the bowl. And if you'll notice, the bowl is curved out so that the rod fits in it. We do not pull this to the end of the hair like we do with our curling irons and then curl. We start out about an inch away from the scalp and we work it in. And it's done by the way you hold the irons. If you'll notice on the handles, we have our plastic covers and they turn. And what we're going to do is do manipulations of clicking the hair in and turning. So, you notice that went 1/2 revolution, or 180 degrees around. We turn, we click, we turn, we click, and the hair works in. And I'm going to show you how to do that with the hair. But as you're just beginning, you need to learn to manipulate your iron by doing it without hair. It becomes a lot more difficult with hair. I always start with my bowl on top, my hair in, and I click, and I turn. And I click, and I turn. And we do that until all the hair ends are worked in, and then we roll it down to the scalp and put the comb under it. You want to be careful to put your fine teeth of the comb under there so that we don't take a chance on burning her scalp. Can I have an end wrap? Now we're going to work with cold irons today. We're going to work with cold irons, but at State Board you're going to also be working with cold irons, and but they're pretending like they've been heated. You're going to test it on something like an end wrap. If that paper scorches, then you know it's too hot to put on the hair. But for now we're going to practice with it cold because we'd burn a head of hair up trying to, when we're just learning, while we're practicing. For State Board purposes, the hair must go around the rod 2 1/2 times. Now naturally in regular hair styling, it's according to how much curl you want or how much wave you want as to what size rod you've got. So the larger the rod, the less curl. The smaller the rod, the more curl. The smaller the rod, the smaller the wave. The larger the rod, the larger the wave. So let's put it on the hair for just a moment and show you what we're talking about with clicking and turning it in. I want to make sure my hair is combed out and smooth with no tangles. The cleaner you keep these irons, the better they work because they depend on the hair sliding on the irons. I like to start down close to the joint, put the hair in, make 1/2 rotation, and start clicking. And you can see the hair starting to go in. And I click, and when I get far enough to make another rotation, I turn. And you can see my hair sliding down towards the ends of the irons because I want my hair ends to be in the center of my curl when I get through. So I click and I turn, and you do not have to hold the ends. They will work their way in as you click and turn, and you can feel them when they go in. Then roll it up, put the comb under it, let it set for a moment or ever how long. Keep your comb in the hair down there. When you start to click it off, loosen up just a little bit, click your iron, and your comb holds it right there in place. Want to see it one more time? And I will work with y'all more on this when y'all get started with it. Start with your bowl on top, and this is called the figure 6. Start with your bowl on top, flip it on the hair, go 1 rotation, start clicking. And you do not have to hold the hair. You know, I like to because I feel like I'm more in control when I hold it. Clicking and turning. Being careful. See, I let some hair slip out then. When it's warm, it really works better because the hair will kind of stick to it. Come out. Make a half a rotation. Start turning. Clicking. And if it tightens up too much on you, let it go back, because if you get too close to the scalp, it will, and that's when you burn your clients. Clicking and turning. Rotate it. Click until you feel your ends go in around the rod, and then roll down. Put your comb under. Alright, the reason that was called a figure 6 is because we only made one loop, you know, when we flipped it over. A figure 8 is when we have 2 loops. Thermal waving and thermal curling are methods of waving and curling straight hair or pressed hair using thermal irons and special manipulative techniques on dry hair. So we usually use this when we've got somebody that has excessively curly hair, and we have used a pressing comb to take all the curl out. And we do that with heat. It's been shampooed and dried. Then we come with our thermal irons, and it's called thermal because thermal means heat. So we're just putting curl back in there. We can use thermal irons on relaxed hair like we do a curling iron, but we want to be real careful with that in that these get so much hotter. The type I have was the stove heated. We do have thermostatically controlled ones. Irons which can be either electrically heated or stove heated have been modernized so successfully that these methods of waving and curly hair are more popular than ever. And a lot of us see this as something they use in the black salons, and they do. But your higher class, upper grade of white salons also use them. The set stays better with this type of irons because we never pull down to the end straightening the hair and then roll it up. We've constantly got the hair going in that circle the entire time we work on it. So it actually lasts a lot longer. Manipulative techniques are basically the same for electric irons or stove heated irons. The only difference is in the thermostatically controlled, the heat will cut off at a certain point. With these, we've got to test to make sure we haven't got too hot, because there's no thermostat to cut it off. It'll get so hot that it'll just burn the hair off when you touch it to the hair if you're not careful. So you want to test the stove heated ones. Thermal irons provide an even heat that is completely controlled by the stylist. The irons must be made of the best quality steel so that they hold an even temperature during the waving and curling process. The styling portion of the irons is composed of 2 parts: the rod, which is a perfectly round solid steel prong, and the shell, also perfectly round with the inside grooves that the rod can rest in it when the irons are closed. And I call the shell the bowl, but that's what it used to be referred to. The edge of the shell nearest the stylist is called the inner edge. The one that's farthest away from us is called the outer edge. Thermal irons come in a variety of styles, sizes, and weights, from small to jumbo, and are available in 3 different classifications: conventional, stove heated, or Marcel iron. And the reason they're called Marcel irons is because a man by the name of Marcel Gratteau invented them. So that's where Marcel comes from. That's what we have here, is the conventional Marcel stove heated iron. We have the electric self-heated, and those are the ones that have the thermostat on it. You can put it on the lower setting for more fragile hair that can't tolerate a lot of heat, or higher for hair that you can get through with in a hurry. And the electric self-heating or vaporizing. We want to be real careful about using the electric self-heated vaporizing. If we have just pressed a head of hair and we use the vaporizing irons, then we're going to make that hair revert back to curly. Excuse me, because vaporizing means that we're adding a mist like to it of water. And so we've pressed the hair, and now we put that vaporizing on it, and it curls it right back up. There is no one correct temperature used for the irons when thermal curling or thermal waving the hair. The temperature setting for irons depends on the texture of the hair, whether it is fine or coarse, or whether it has been lightened or tinted. Hair that has been lightened or tinted, as well as white hair, should be curled and waved with lukewarm irons. Coarse and gray hair, as a rule, can withstand more heat than fine hair. But let's discuss that a minute. Tells us coarse and gray hair can withstand more heat than fine hair. But can't we get a scorched look on gray hair from using these irons? Yes, if we get them a little bit warm, that hair is going to be dingy, looking like it's dirty. And that's why you don't use, that's one of the reasons you don't use a real hot one on lightened hair or white hair. Fine hair, anytime we put an awful lot of intense heat on it, we're going to mess that hair up. It raises the cuticle scales up. We know that fine hair is not as large in diameter as the other, so heat's real damaging to it. After heating the irons to the desired temperature, test them on a piece of tissue paper. Just clamp the paper over it, leave it for 5 seconds. If the paper turns brown, then there's a chance that the hair would too, so we let the irons cool a little bit. One of the major things with these irons about $35 a piece, but they will last as long as you're in the business if you take care of them. But that's where it's all at. So thermal irons should be kept clean and free from rust and carbon. To remove dirt or grease, wash the irons in a soap solution containing a few drops of ammonia. This cuts any oil and grease that might cling to the irons. Fine sandpaper or steel wool with a little oil helps to remove rust and carbon and polishes the iron. To make sure you get more movement, oil the joints of the iron. Thermal irons are designed to hold heat in the most uniform manner. If you overheat the irons, however, in most cases they will be ruined. That's called they lose their temper, because they are tempered, which means heating them to a certain degree with a coating and all on it to temper them. And I'm serious, it's good. They lose their temper. The comb you use with your thermal iron should be about 7 inches long, made of hard rubber or another non-flammable substance. They should have fine teeth. Fine teeth hold the hair more firmly than coarse teeth. Hold the comb between the thumb and all 4 fingers of the left hand, with the index finger resting on the backbone of the comb for better control, and one end of the comb resting against the outer edge of the palm. This position assures a strong hold and a firm movement. Manipulating the irons, and we just saw how you manipulate them. You got to get in a comfortable position. And if you noticed a while ago, if you'll hold your hands up and look, if your pinky is a lot shorter than your other finger, the ring finger next to it, you're going to have a hard time manipulating just with your little finger like this. I have to often use my ring finger too. The thing is to catch on where you can manipulate them. And you see now my ring finger went in there. So find what is comfortable for you. And we can't reach over and grab it like I just did because it's hot. We'll try that out as we go along. Grasp the handles of the iron in your right hand if you're right-handed, left-handed if you're left-handed, far enough away from the joint to avoid the heat. Place your 3 middle fingers on the back of the lower handle, your little finger in front of the lower handle, and your thumb in front of the upper handle. And that's just what I just showed you. It's supposed to be like that. But like I said, my little pinky, when I start turning, that's what happens. I lose all control, so I have to put 2 fingers back there. And if you have to, that's perfectly all right as you turn. The best way to begin to practice manipulative techniques with thermal irons is by rolling the cold irons in your hand, first forward, then backward. This rolling movement should be done without any sway or motion in the arm. Only the fingers are used as you roll the handles in either direction. And we want to learn to do that too, because we don't want to wind up with carpal tunnel from jumping all over the place with our wrist. Modern thermal irons and a comb are all you need to give your client curls. Thermal curling, which requires no setting creams or lotion, may be used to great advantage. On straight hair, because it permits quick styling, thermal curling eliminates working with wet hair and does away with the need for rollers and a long hair drying process. And what that means is this is for the client who wants to shampoo and blow dry their hair at home and just come in to you and get a style. On pressed hair, it permits styling the hair without the danger of its returning to its former extremely curly condition. Thermal curling prepares the hair for any desired style. And we don't have to section off or anything to do these. Usually I like to clip my hair out of the way. But we do it just like we've been accustomed to doing with our rollers and all. Whatever style we want, that's what we roll for. They can be flipped up, turned under, horizontal, vertical, diagonal. Thermal irons may also be used with wigs and hair pieces because it presents a quick and effective method for their styling. Then we want to talk about our manipulations, and I told y'all this was the figure 6 that we did just now. There is also a figure 8 where we've looped the hair around at one time. We come back and open the shell a little bit and loop it around the rod again and click it in. It's more complicated, that's why I don't start you out with it. But on longer hair it works really good. Curling medium length hair, you'd probably use the figure 6, and with short hair. Then when you get to longer hair, you want to use the figure 8 or 2 loops. So figure 6 is called 1 loop, figure 8 is called the 2 loops. Some other things we can use our thermal irons for are spiral curls. What is the difference in a spiral curl and a regular curl anyway? That's right, it comes down, it's wrapped kind of like the handle of a tennis racket. It comes down like that. We can work it around, and then we'd be rolling it diagonally and work the ends in just like we were doing a while ago, except leaving them, we don't work the ends right into the middle. Volume thermal iron curls are used to create volume or lift in a finished hairstyle. The degree of lift desired determines the type of volume curls to be used. And y'all remember about volume. This is when we over direct or put it 45 degrees beyond perpendicular. That's what volume-based curls are for, to provide maximum lift or volume since the curl is placed very high on its base. Our full base curls provide a strong curl with full volume. Section off the hair, hold the hair strand at a 125 degree angle, slide the irons over the hair strand about 1/2 to 1 inch from the scalp, and start our manipulations just like we did a while ago. Our half base curls provide a strong curl with moderate lift or volume. Section off the base, hold the strand at a 90 degree angle. Slide irons over the hair strand and manipulate them in. Place the rod half off of its base. Off base curls offer a curl option with only slight lift or volume. Section it off, hold the hair at a 70 degree angle, and this is what we usually talk about being something like 45 degrees below perpendicular. Roll the curl in the usual manner and then place it completely off the base, and we do this when we don't want a lot of lift and bounce. Whenever you give thermal setting, make sure that you let the hair completely cool. Remember, you put curl in the hair with heat, and if you brush it while it's still warm, that takes part of your curl out, so you want to be careful with that. So let's talk about our safety measures now. Use thermal irons only after receiving instruction in their use, and you remember I told you to start out practicing without hair. Then you could move on to hair once you begin to click and turn the irons. You go to hair, and then you finally add some heat, because by then you're a little bit proficient with the irons. Keep thermal irons clean and oil the joint. Do not overheat the irons, because this can damage the ability of the irons to hold heat uniformly. Test the temperature of the irons on tissue paper before placing them on the hair. This keeps us from burning the hair. And we don't want to just stand there and inhale the fumes off of those irons, because after a while it becomes dangerous to our lungs. And that's another reason we want to keep our irons good and clean. We want to make sure that we've got all that carbon and all off of it, because not only are we going to breathe the carbon, but whatever's on that iron is going to wind up on our client's hair, so we want to make sure it's not something from the other client. The heat itself will sterilize the irons, but we've got other things left on there, such as carbon and burned hair. Do not place the hot irons near the face to test for temperature. A burn can result. Handle thermal irons carefully to avoid burning yourself or your client. Place hot irons in a cool, safe place to, in a safe place to cool. Do not leave them where they might accidentally come into contact with other clients or be knocked down on somebody's feet. When heating the irons, do not place the handles too close to the heater. Your hand might be burned when you remove them. Make sure the irons are properly balanced in the heater or they might fall and be damaged or either injure someone else. Use only hard rubber or non-flammable combs. Celluloid combs must not be used in thermal curling as they are flammable. Do not use metal combs because they become hot and then would burn the client. Do not use combs with broken teeth. They can break or split the hair or injure the scalp. Place a comb between the scalp and the thermal irons when curling or waving hair to prevent burning the scalp. The client's hair must be clean and completely dry to ensure a good thermal curl or wave. If the hair is thick and bulky, thin and taper it before you do a thermal waving or curling process. On lightened or tinted hair, use thermal irons only on their lower settings or those that are not overly hot. Do not allow the hair ends to protrude over the irons. To do so would cause fish hook ends or hair that is bent or folded. Do not use vaporizing thermal irons on pressed hair because the hair will revert to its original extremely curly state. Do not use thermal irons on chemically straightened hair because they might cause damage to the hair. They can be used on relaxed hair if we control the heat or don't get them real hot. We need to always keep a first aid kit available in the case we accidentally touch the thermal iron to our client's ear or scalp or forehead, and it should contain 1% gentian violet jelly. Y'all might want to write that down. That's a burn cream. 1% gentian, G-E-N-T-I-A-N, violet, V-I-O-L-E-T, jelly. And apply that immediately. If you touch your fingers with the irons or touch that client somewhere with the hot iron, immediately put some burn cream on there. All right, do we have questions?